Insurance isn't one size fits all. That's why customers have enjoyed Progressive's Name Your Price tool for years now. With the Name Your Price tool, you tell them what you want to pay, and they'll show you options that fit your budget. So whether you're picking out your first policy or just looking for something that works better for you and your family, they make it easy to see your options. Visit Progressive.com. Find a rate that works for you with the Name Your Price tool. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Support for this podcast comes from Progressive, America's #1 motorcycle insurer. Did you know riders who switch and save with Progressive save nearly $200 per year? That's a whole new pair of riding gloves and more. Quote today, Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $197 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between October 2024 and September 2025. Potential savings will vary.
When I say squirrel, what comes to mind? Those sweet little guys munching on acorns and nuts? Rocky from Rocky and Bullwinkle? Well, in today's episode, Dr. Sonja Wild joins me. She's a behavioral ecologist and she focuses on social learning culture. Now, she's studied everything from dolphins to ground squirrels, but let's talk ground squirrels. Typically, ground squirrels are considered granivores. Basically, that means they eat seeds and grain. But in 2024, undergrad students working with her brought her a video of something no one had seen before. Squirrels actively hunting and eating California voles. Now, if you don't know what a vole is, it's a small rodent that looks kind of like a mouse. So I really want you to think about this. That really peaceful squirrel in your yard could actually be a pretty vicious hunter. Remember the bunny rabbit in Monty Python's Holy Grail? Just saying. Now, beyond the vole hunting, we talk about how human presence can shape how an animal actually acts, how human traffic in parks can affect individual behavior, their social networks, and so much more. What do animals learn from each other? When does social learning produce culture? How does environment shape behavior? Sonja, she's a wealth of information, and this one, it's a lot more than just nuts.
For real, 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 for real. Got a bunch of furry friends and I love them all the same. I'm an animal lover, veterinarian is the name. They share some pet stories from heartwarming to strange, losses and gains from wacky to insane. For real. You're now tuned in to For Real with your host, Markakyle.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the For Real podcast. Today, I've got a big treat for you. I have my new best friend, Sonja Wild. Sonja, welcome to the show. We're going to have fun.
Thanks so much for having me, Mark. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, it's my pleasure, more importantly, because you've done some really cool stuff, and we're going to get into a bunch of different things. But first off, though, I want everybody to get to know you, and I want to talk about your journey, where you grew up, your love of animals, whatever journey you want to take us on that journey. And let's just, let's hear what you got to say. And I apologize right away. I'm probably going to interrupt and I'm probably going to go off script somehow, but just hang in there. I'll get back there eventually.
Sure. Well, today I'm a scientist. I'm a behavioral ecologist, meaning that I want to know all about what animals do, why they do it, given their very specific characteristics, given the environment they live in, the friends they have. And I'm just very excited about all animals. And this is something I've had since very early childhood. I grew up in the Swiss countryside, and my dad was breeding rabbits. So ever since I was little, I was around them. I helped care for them. And very importantly, sometimes I just sat there for hours watching the rabbits being rabbits. And I think that's really, really how my journey into this profession started.
What's funny is I just had somebody on, we were talking about rabbits, and there's zoomies. I'd never heard of, do you know these terms at all? Zoomies. And
oh, yeah.
I knew the thumper. Here's a crazy story. I told you I'll go off track. So I bought a house years and years ago when I lived in California. In the house we bought, it was an older couple, and they had a house rabbit. And their deal was where they're moving, they couldn't do it. So part of the contract to buy the house, I had to buy the rabbit.
Amazing.
I literally was part of the house. I had a rabbit. Anyways, back to you. So you were raising rabbits with your dad.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And definitely like spent all my time outside wherever I could. And that then continued this love for the outdoors, the nature, animals. I decided to study biology at the University of Zurich, and this is really where I got into the whole behavioral aspect of animals. I really wanted to know why they do things the way they do them. And that's also the first time I got into touch with what would then become my main topic of research, namely social learning, which is essentially learning from others. It's something that humans do all the time. Like we copy behaviors, we copy interests, we do what everybody else is doing. But in the animal world, this is something that hasn't been known for that long. It's only in the last maybe 2 decades that this has become very popular, where people have started wondering, what do animals learn from each other? Who learns from whom? Under what circumstances? And that's a question, or been a core question to all of my research ever since I started.
So I'm curious, though. I mean, you always loved animals and you did all that, but how did you get to social learning? I mean, did you have a professor, or what was it? What got you there?
Yeah, absolutely. It was actually my professor, my master's professor at the University of Zurich, who approached me during a course I did on, I think, evolutionary genetics or something, and was like, "Hey, do you know yet what you're gonna do for your master's thesis?" And I was like, "Yes, I am going to study orangutans in Indonesia." And then he was like, "Oh, okay, that's a bummer, because I do have this really amazing project on dolphins in Australia." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, no, sorry. I don't really, yeah, I already have other plans." But then 2 weeks later, I was like, "Sonja, what are you doing?" And I went back to the professor and was like, "Hey, so about that opportunity, is it still available?" And he was like, "Yeah, let's talk about it." And so he basically came up with this whole idea because this population is a really, really well-studied bottlenose dolphin population in Western Australia. So they've been studied since the 1980s. But still, there were lots of new things to be discovered. One of which was some of those dolphins started using empty shells of these very giant gastropods, so sea snails, to trap fish. And how it works is that the dolphins chase a fish into that empty shell underwater, and then they insert their mouth into the shell. They bring the whole thing up to the water surface, and then they shake it above the surface so that the water drains out of the shell and the fish falls into their open mouth. And this is super spectacular. And only a subset of the individuals in the population were doing it. So they were wondering, like, why? How does it spread within the population? Are there any environmental factors that might influence where the behavior occurs and who might do it? So that became the topic of my master thesis, which then transitioned into a PhD, for which I moved to England, actually. So that has really been kind of the core or the start of my scientific journey.
So a couple of things that I thought about when I was reading about this. It's called shelling. Is that what it's called?
That is correct.
Okay, so I was thinking about somebody getting I'm going to just use a cereal box and just sticking in their just pouring it in there. So they're basically, it's almost like they're creating a trap for the fish, and they're hunting them and eating them, which is really cool in so many ways. But the other thing I read about, and this is what I want you to talk about, they've learned it differently.
Yeah, absolutely. So for, in fact, many species that have these like very long periods of maternal care, so where they're young, they stay with their mothers or their parents for a really long time, it is often the case that the offspring then learn behaviors from their parents,
Right.
just because they're exposed to those consistently. And that is also the case for dolphins. These dolphins have usually one calf at a time, and that calf stays with the mother for several years. So the mother is usually the most important role model for any behavior. And the most classic case that we know of, or the best studied behavior, is the so-called sponging, which is also a behavior that these dolphins do in Shark Bay that involves the use of tools. But unlike shelling, they use these conically shaped sponges that they put on their mouths when they forage. And it's believed that it serves as sort of a glove when they go dig in the sand for prey that is buried underneath. And so also really cool behavior, and it's very specialized. So what we call a sponging dolphins almost always carries a sponge when it forages, and others just don't do it. And so they also, like my collaborators, they used many decades of data to see how this behavior spreads within the population, and they've shown that this is also a behavior that daughters learn from their mothers.
Yeah.
And this is kind of the typical learning pathway in this species, and in general in like toothed whales or other species with long parental care. But shelling, as you said, shelling is different because we found that actually it doesn't spread from mothers to their offspring, but more among close associates. So the dolphins that these individuals spend a lot of time with. And that was something that had so far not really been shown in this or any other population.
It's kind of like you're a gang leader and you're teaching everybody to go how to steal something, basically, is what they're doing.
Pretty much.
Is there any theory of why that is versus not the traditional way of learning, teaching your family, basically, as versus your friends are teaching, hey, let's go do drugs, and that's kind of a thing? It's kind of like that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But is there any theory? Do you guys have any theory? Have they come up with any reasoning for it, or?
Yeah. In fact, a previous podcast when that study came out called them the delinquent dolphins. They learn it from not their mothers. So this goes in line
with my gang.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So what we think is that it has to do with the very opportunistic nature of shelling.
Uh-huh.
Sponging, for example, is something that is very specialized. So they use those sponges all the time. So you to learn that behavior, you really want a trusted role model that knows how to do it properly. And your mother is probably a good guess, since your mother is alive and you are alive as an offspring. That means she must have done something right. So copying behaviors from her seems like a pretty good idea. The shelling is a lot more opportunistic, because to do the behavior, you need to happen to come upon one of those empty shells. So that's just something that these dolphins do on the side. So all of these shelling dolphins, they also engage in a whole variety of other foraging behavior. And so it's a less cost involved if you just copy this behavior from somebody you might not know so well, or, you don't know if the behavior is really that beneficial or not. But if it doesn't work, then it's no harm done.
What I was thinking is that one is they have to have the skill to chase the fish in there too. So they probably have to wait till they get closer and probably do that. So what I'm going to say, this is going to be me going way off tangent. So it's like that friend that knows in this one store, if they've got a candy and the guy that works behind there doesn't know how to see everything, it's a really easy place to get candy. So these guys are going, this is a great place to get a dessert of another fish. I can eat this fish really good, is what they're doing at some level.
Absolutely. And it's pretty ingenious, honestly.
Yeah, sure. So the sponge thing, the way I'm pretty visual, right? So I can totally see the shell. I can see that and shaking it around and that. So I'm assuming that the sponging deal is they're putting it around their what's it called? Their nose.
It's called a rostrum, and it's essentially their mouth. Lots of people will call it the nose, but the nose is actually the blowhole on the top of the head. Yeah.
So, but they're doing it almost like a cage to protect it, so they don't get all scratched up and stuff like that. Is that pretty much why they're forging it in?
That is currently what is believed.
Yeah.
I have to say that the behavior does happen at 15 meters, like water depth, I don't know that what that's in feet. I'm sorry.
So they started at age of 15?
No, sorry. At water depths of 50 meters. So
So that's about 45 feet.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's not that. So we don't really usually see the behavior at the bottom of the ocean. We usually just see when they come up to the surface to breathe, when they usually still have the sponge on their mouth, because they sometimes carry those with them for like hours and hours if they found a good one.
I need to, I haven't seen any pictures of it. It just sounds really cool. I think when we talked before, I was talking about sea otters, you see that they use tools and stuff like that. The stuff you see on social media, most of it's not true, by the way. But for you guys listening, if you see a bunch of stuff with sea otters and they're floating around holding stuff, more than likely that's an AI generated thing or some other real deal, but they use tools as well. So, are you familiar with, and I'm going to get into all the other species we've talked about, and if we're missing something on the dolphins, I'm going to go there. Are you familiar with the Free-Ranging Dog Project?
Doesn't tell me anything right now, no.
I think they're not Swiss, but they actually may be Swiss originally. So basically, and I want to just plant the seed, and I want to get to this at the end. So the study is that they have these dogs that don't live at a house. So they're out there free ranging, and they have learned how to live a life, and they go around getting food or whatever. And then this is where for our next, when we talk about the birds, they put food in different containers and how the dogs learn how to do it. Most of the lazy ones go, oh, wait, there'll be more. They eat trash and stuff like that too. But I'm curious for your study is looking how they learn how to live that life, because there's that theory as well. If I don't have to live in somebody's backyard, I just cruise around. Hey, today I'm going to the beach and hang out, or I'm going to go skiing up on the hill or whatever else. You should look into that. It'd be interesting to see what your theory is on how they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah, I'll need to check it out. It sounds highly relevant to what I do. So
Yeah.
For real, 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 for real.
And we'll be right back. I want to tell you about something that's really cool. But first, let me set the stage for all you parents out there, new and old. Think about being so exhausted you can barely function. Now think about some of the chores you just want to do, especially when you're a new parent. Now how about this chore? Changing that stinky litter box. Yep, that one. Let's talk about Whisker's Litter Robot and how it eliminates that chore so you don't have to think about it. My daughter recently got her litter robot, and let me tell you, she's got a smile that's a mile wide. Life's busy, especially for new families. So, Whisker Litter Robot taking over the daily litter box duty? It's a breath of fresh air, literally. Maintain your cat's litter while focusing on your growing family and learning more about Whisker Litter Robot models and starter kits today to get set up before your new baby arrives. And take an additional $50 off bundles with code FORREAL when you shop whisker.com/forreal. Again, that's an additional $50 off bundles with code FORREAL at whisker.com/forreal.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy to see if you could save when you bundle your home and auto policies. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
As a pet lover, did you know your pet can benefit from the incredible healing power of stem cell therapy? Prep Therapy offers a groundbreaking solution taken right from your pet's own blood. Say goodbye to joint pain, arthritis, kidney and liver conditions, and more. They'll experience faster recovery, increased vitality, and extended quality of life without the need for surgery or harmful drugs. Put the wag back in their tail and discover Prep Therapy today at PrepVet.com. Save 10% with promo code FURREALPODCAST, covered by most pet insurance.
I want to talk about corvids and crows. I would assume that that's very similar to what we're going to talk about with the tits, right? So let's talk about the birds and go from there. By the way, did we forget anything on the dolphins, or do we have more to talk about?
No, I think we can go on to the next to the next study species that I worked on.
Yeah, well, we're going to talk all day, so don't worry. Take your time. We're going to do this like 10 hours. Don't worry about it.
Sounds great. I've got lots to talk about.
So you've been in Australia. You leave the ocean to go to the land. So I'm going to set it there, and now you can serve the meal.
Absolutely. Yeah. So dolphins were fantastic in many ways. Lots of really cool natural behaviors. But also for most of my studies, I needed about 12 years of data. And that makes things hard.
Yeah.
So for my first postdoc, I actually moved countries as well as ecosystems and the study species. I went to southern Germany to start working on these little songbirds called great tits. They are very common in European forests, and they have really become kind of a model system for all sorts of questions relating to how animals learn things, because they can be tracked really easily with these, what we call pit tags. These are just essentially little microchips that you might give to your pet, like a cat or dog. And they can, for the birds, they go around their leg, and they can be read remotely by receiving antenna. So for my questions that I was interested in the more mechanistic side of how these individuals learn from others, this was fantastic because I could put out these, I built these puzzle boxes that they could solve to then figure out who learns what behavior from whom. And these puzzle boxes have been used quite frequently in other studies. What they usually do is they have a little sliding door at the front of the box that these birds peck either from the right or from the left to uncover a hole that leads into a tray that is filled with mealworms. So if they manage to push the door, they can pick out a reward, so to say. And then there's a little antenna that they land on that tells me exactly which bird is present.
Right.
And I have all these sensors in the box that tell me when did they solve and what side did they push the door. And this is a setup that has been used to show that these birds can learn socially from others. So by observing others, they learn how to access that food reward. And my question and focused more on the juvenile period, which I've already alluded to basically when talking about the dolphins. Because when we think about learning in juveniles, we often think about the species like many great apes or dolphins or elephants that do spend a lot of time with their mothers or their parents. And then naturally, the role models are typically the mothers or parents. But we actually didn't know so much about learning in species where that time is much more limited. So if you, basically the birds, they lay their eggs, they incubate for a few weeks, then the parents feed the offspring in the nest for a few weeks, and then they hatch. They fledge, they leave the nest and start roaming around in their little family units for only about 1 to 3 weeks. And then the juveniles are entirely independent. So that leaves very, very little time to kind of explore the environment together with the parents. And I was curious to see what effects that short period of parental care had on the learning strategies that these juveniles used. So that's what we did. We actually modified the existing puzzle boxes that we could block access for specific birds based on their little pit tags, so no microchips. So when they landed on the antenna, the door either opened to the right side or unblocked to the right side, to the left, or to both. So I had parents that could only push the door to the left, others only to the right, others where I had mixed, one could go right, one could go left, and others had no access at all. So then I went ahead and looked at what behaviors do the juveniles do. That gave me insight into what do they actually learn for parents if they do so at all. And it was very interesting to see that if they had parents that knew how to solve this box, they were more likely to do so themselves, which suggested that, like, oh yeah, of course they seem to be observing the parents. But then when we looked at the site choices they made, and to actually look who they learned from based on who they were hanging out with at the time, so their social network, we found that they actually, the siblings were the most important role models and not the parents. So how it worked is that the first sibling of a clutch, which is called, usually between like 3 and 10 in each sibling cohort. The first one usually learned either from parents or an unrelated adult. And then all these subsequent siblings learned from the ones who had already learned to solve the box.
Big brother.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
So that was quite surprising. And this leads to similarities in behavior in families without the actual need for transmission from parents to the kids, essentially, but kind of an alternative way via the siblings. That is something that we hadn't really known.
So are they learning from observation? Or are they learning from communication other than observation? Is it both?
It is most likely just observation.
Not like going, beep, beep, beep. Don't do that.
I mean, there is definitely a lot of that involved when you, from some video, it's constant noise, but it's most likely just observational. We have no evidence that they can communicate that to that extent. And also it's a passive thing. It's like the siblings aren't teaching the other siblings to do the boxes. It's more like they do it, somebody happens to watch and then repeat the action, see if they also get something.
So when you were doing that, so the parent goes down and I'm assuming the parents learned from their grandparent, would be the grandparents now their parents? Is that how they learned? Or when does one figure it out? I mean, here's our puzzle box. Nobody's ever done it before. How does that work?
Yeah, so the parents initially learned from other adults. So we had those boxes out before essentially the breeding season, and they learned from other adults. And that goes really rapidly. It's something we term so-called horizontal transmission.
Sure.
That's within generations, exactly. And that's something that then behavior can spread super fast. And it's something that the juvenile birds also engaged in to an extent, in that, the first sibling got to learn from somebody.
Right.
And that was a mix of parents and other adults, essentially. And what was super interesting to see is that the juveniles were very conformist when they picked their sites, meaning that they kind of looked what everybody else was doing at the time they were learning. So if the majority of the birds in the area pushed the door to the left, they would also go left. Uh-huh. And if the majority pushed it right, they would also go right. And that's something we humans actually do a lot too. When we go to a new area or we figure out a new behavior, like we walk into a restaurant in a different country that we don't quite know how it works. We look around what everybody else is doing and then kind of adopt that behavior that everybody else is showing.
So I'm guessing, because in our world, most people are followers, not leaders. So are there leaders in the bird world? And I'm just wondering a couple things. I'm assuming that they're just like any species. Some are just smarter than others. Some are just clueless and some are whatever. So the ones that are more intelligent or more just savvy, let's use that term, more savvy, they go, okay, if I slide this box this way, I'm getting something. So I'm going to slide it to the left, and then everybody kind of pays attention, and they're all kind of signing there. But do you occasionally have the one that goes, I'm not doing that, because that would be me. I'm not going to that left side. I want to see what's on that right side.
There are definitely birds like you then. Because, very occasionally you have the one that's just like, you know what? I've been going right. I'm going to go left. It's really rare though. The majority will just do whatever everybody else is doing. But we have had cases of very spontaneous just switches. Mm-hmm. And it's something I have the data for, haven't really analyzed, is if they then start influencing the behavior of others. And what I've just preliminarily looked at was that the more you do on one side, the longer you've been going right, the less likely you are to switch even if somebody else is doing
Yeah.
it, which, it tracks very much with what we experience from humans.
If I walk this way, it's a lot flatter and I just like it. I'm used to going that way. If I go that way, I'm not really sure how to get there. So I'm just going to go the way I know how to go. So when you were doing the study, so let's say the one that they're doing, they're all moving it to the left. Do you occasionally switch it where it's the right, where where they can't get it, won't open? And then if you make it where it opens the other way, do they learn that again? And how long does that typically take for them to figure it out? Is it a very long period of time?
Absolutely. We've actually even tested that, because when we tested those blocked door designs, we wanted to see, are they able to switch even though they've used to different sites, and we found that most were able to switch, but they were very different in how long it took them.
Yeah.
And one of the predictors was very much like, how long have you already been going one side?
I think you need to study cephalopods like octopus. They're so smart. I would love to see, because they've done all kinds of different studies on what they do. How they open up something, but they found out, because they would learn how to open up these things that maybe have food in there, right? Like a jar. But originally the thought was, oh, they're just figuring it out, but they could smell. And they were smelling the food, and that's when they would actually stick with it, because they knew that they're getting a prize there. But that's right up the same alley that you're doing. That's really cool.
That sounds like our squirrels.
Yeah, well, we're getting there.
Yeah.
We're going to get there. So I'm surprised. Well, I'm not surprised. I'm curious. In the back of your mind, have you wanted to study crows? Because they're fascinating.
Absolutely. I mean, they're one of the most interesting organisms for all questions relating to social learning and intelligence and innovation and so on. And friends of mine have actually studied them. I never got the chance, different career paths have opened, but what often is the case is sample sizes. So for more the mechanistic questions like I'm interested in, you need a lot of data on a lot of different individuals. And then species like the great danes that occur in the hundreds in those forests are much more suitable. For often when you work with corvids, for example, you're restricted to maybe 10, 20, 30 individuals in captivity or in the wild. And then it's much, much harder to ask those questions.
Well, do you know that, because when I was reading all the different things you were talking about, as an example, dolphins, when they're shelling, they teach their friends, right? And then you go to the sponge and they just learn from the family. And then these guys are learning from dad down to the big brother or big sister and all the way down. So they did a study, I think it was at University of Washington or whatever, and because crows will remember people they don't like, and they talk to each other. So they did a deal. So you may know this or not being from the U.S., but Dick Cheney, do you know that name?
Yes.
So especially up there in a very liberal area of Washington. So they had these guys wear full-on masks that was Dick Cheney. Do you know this? Do you know this one?
I know that study, yeah.
It cracked me up. First of all, I think it's just hilarious that they did it. And all they did is they netted them and they remembered them. And so from then on, if they walked down the campus, this is for people who haven't heard the story, they would go yell at them and they go, oh, you're a bad guy, or whatever, and swoop down at them anytime they had the mask on. If they took the mask off, they didn't do anything with them because they thought it was somebody else. It's crazy. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing. And the it's even more fascinating because individuals started doing it that had never even experienced it. So there was some sort of learning from one corvid to the next was happening, but still don't quite understand how. It's amazing.
It's so your world. You jumped into this world and this is what you do now. It's pretty cool.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so let's talk squirrels. Now, wait a minute. Now, did we get you? I know we were on your journey. So you were doing the dolphins in, at that time you were in Australia. Then you went to Germany with the crazy birds that like foods out of boxes. And so now what's next? And how did your transition go? And let's get to the squirrels.
Sure. The transition was actually pretty funny. I will loop back to the dolphins where I've mentioned
Okay.
that, very cool natural behaviors, but not like you take years and years to get the data you need, can't do remote tracking. Then I came to the birds where it was basically the opposite world. We had hundreds of individuals that were individually tracked. Everything's automated.
Right.
But I really, really missed like interacting with the animals, like seeing them. Because basically I put those puzzle boxes out in the forest. I caught those birds in nets and put a chip on them and then let them go again. But I didn't really get to see them, get to know them individually. And that was something that I was really missing. Because I love observing them and see what they do in their environment. So the idea came up to write my own grant to like see what questions I'm interested in on the topic of learning, social learning, but I needed a new study organism. And how I came to that was actually pretty funny because during my work with the birds, I was in a constant fight with the local squirrels. They are extremely food motivated. They just were so good at breaking into all of my equipment. They bit through cables and ripped down equipment from trees. And it was just like arms race of how well can I protect the bird equipment versus how clever the squirrel was to like circumvent my
little devils.
Absolutely. And it was it cost me many days and weeks of extra works because of them. So I was like, you know what, they're pretty clever. I'm curious what sort of research is out there on their cognition, on their learning. And I realized that there's actually a bit of a gap specifically relating to social learning. So I contacted my current collaborator, Jen Smith, who established this field site on California ground squirrels, if she was interested in doing a research project together. So we Zoomed, we were very excited, and came up with some ideas on what we could look at. And then I wrote the grant to the Swiss National Science Foundation and was lucky enough to get it. So this was a 2-year fellowship that allowed me to come out to California and conduct a study. And what the direction we took was actually a topic that is becoming more and more important, which is what impacts we humans have on behavior of wild animals. Because we are everywhere and we are invading pretty much all of the ecosystems around the world.
It's affecting every animal.
The consequences, absolutely, consequences are immense. Some species are obviously very much suffering through habitat destruction.
Orangutan.
Exactly. One good example. It's probably what I would have studied if I'd gone down that road. But the interesting part is that these animals are adapting. They're changing their behavior to try and live and coexist with humans. And some species are incredibly good at this. Coyotes and squirrels.
Yeah.
Squirrels are amazing at invading urban landscapes. They manage to feed on human resources. And California ground squirrels in particular are considered agricultural pests here in California because they do so much damage to crops. So they are being culled in very large numbers to keep them out of fields and walnut groves and everything.
Well, you got a bunch of pecans and walnut groves in your part of the world.
Absolutely, yeah. And the squirrels love them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I kind of started turning the whole thing around. Instead of looking at the more vulnerable species and seeing how do they suffer, I turned it around and was like, hey, can we learn something from a really adaptable species that might teach us something about how these animals do it? Like, how do they learn and adapt their behavior to successfully coexist with humans. So I took a lot of elements from my previous year's research. I should say that these squirrels are amazing because they combine the best of both worlds. Where we study them at Briones Regional Park, which is just outside of the Bay Area, they have been studied since 2013. So they have had a lot of time to kind of habituate. There's lots of hikers and bikers and dog walkers that are visiting this park. So we are able to just walk up to the squirrels and observe what they do. But we also trap them, and we give them little pit tags under the skin this time, not around the leg. And we put little paint marks on their backs so that we can visually identify who they are. So this gives us the opportunity to watch what individual squirrels do from birth until they die. But to also remotely track them. So I also, again, put out puzzle boxes to see who does what, how do they learn, how does human presence influence this whole thing. So they really are an amazing combination of both worlds.
So how do they learn? Do they learn by peers, or do they learn by their family, or how do they learn? Or are they just too smart to begin with?
Well, they were definitely very food motivated, as you say, with the smell. They have a really amazing sense of smell. So as soon as these puzzle boxes went out, they were all over it. And I had to do some adjustments for sure, because they learned to shake the seed out of the box without actually solving it. So what I ended up with was a little seesaw puzzle. So at the front of the box, there was a little lever, a horizontal lever that they had to step on, either on the right or on the left. And then there was a little funnel that spat out just a couple of sunflower seeds as a food reward. And here I integrated basically a new kind of level to the analysis, because I wanted to know what individual characteristics make them better at learning to solve this thing. And by individual characteristics, I mean personality, essentially. Because just like us...
Yeah, the delinquent or whatever, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. They do have a lot of different personality aspects. We call them behavioral types. So, for example, there's large variation in how bold or how shy they are in respect to humans in particular. And that's something we can measure really easily in this population. And that's something that lots of people do and lots of animals. And that's actually a really fun game if you have animals in your environment, like wild animals in whatever parks close by, to do so-called flight initiation distance trials. How it works is that you start at a distance away, the animal is just on the ground, maybe eating some grass, and you start walking up slowly to the animal, and then you note at what distance it starts running away. And turns out that many, many animals, and including the squirrels, are actually very consistent in the distance at which they run away. So that's something we use as like a measure of how reactive are they to humans. So we have those that are like, yeah, no, I'm out of here, versus others that let you walk up like to, I don't know, a couple of feet away and are like, hey, you got something for me? So they're very, very consistent in their responses. And we use it as a proxy for how bold are they.
Do you think that as time's going on, as they're adjusting to more and more humans, they're letting humans get closer?
Yeah, there's definitely an element of what we call plasticity.
Yeah.
So usually these behaviors are partially innate. So they're born with a set of genes that make them more or less bold. But then there's definitely the environment shapes as to how those genes manifest. So if you're exposed to lots of humans all the time, there's definitely an element of habituation. So that otherwise, if you keep running away when you even see one, then you never get to forage or, explore, do anything really. If you're too fearful, and you might go hungry.
I find the younger squirrels are a lot more bold than the other ones because they haven't learned anything. But I was thinking about it. I have a bird feeder at my house, right? The one I had before there, squirrels love bird feeders, and they would be eating those things. So they have the ones now where They get on there, it's a spring and it closes it up. They can't get there.
Yeah.
These little suckers, so once a day, they climb up and start biting whatever the plastic is so they can get in anyways. They figure it out eventually. It's funny how they do that.
Yeah, they're incredible.
Yeah.
Just as an anecdote, there's that really amazing video of, I forgot his name. It's a former NASA engineer who created this obstacle course for squirrels because they had that same issue. They kept getting into his bird feeder and he was like, how smart are they really? So he created this obstacle course with all sorts of different things that they had to do and made this absolutely hilarious 10-minute video of how they managed to get through, how they failed and started again.
Well, they're hard-headed.
I'll try and remember sending you a link. I can definitely recommend to watch it for everybody listening. I've watched it many times and laughed.
Well, you know what we need to do is you need to send it to me. We'll put it in the description. So if you guys are listening, it'll be in the description when you send it to me. We'll do that for sure.
Perfect. I will make sure to do that.
For real, 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 for real.
And we'll be right back.
As a pet lover, did you know your pet can benefit from the incredible healing power of stem cell therapy? Prep Therapy offers a groundbreaking solution taken right from your pet's own blood. Say goodbye to joint pain, arthritis, kidney and liver conditions, and more. They'll experience faster recovery, increased vitality, and extended quality of life without the need for surgery or harmful drugs. Put the wag back in their tail and discover Prep Therapy today at prepvet.com. Save 10% with promo code FURREALPODCAST, covered by most pet insurance.
One of the reasons I reached out to you was, we all know them as eating nuts and grains and all that. And in the last 10 years, has it been, or 11, 12 years when they started being carnivores? And that's all I'm going to say. I'm going to let you talk to. Well, whenever that started, let's talk about that. Because, by the way, we're going to have this in there too. Sonja's got an amazing YouTube channel. First of all, if you go there, you have to subscribe. I'm just telling you that now. But you need to watch this video of this squirrel. And that's all I'm going to say. I'll let you talk to Russ.
Well, that's an amazing introduction. Get everybody curious.
Yeah.
So squirrels are opportunistic. They love eating pretty much everything they can get their paws on, I guess. And as I mentioned, we've been studying this population at this urban park since 2013 and thought there were no more surprises, but we were wrong because in 2024, so it's only been a couple of years now.
Oh, it's only a year. Okay. I was, where I confused it with your park studies.
Yeah, it's pretty recent. In 2024, when we came to the field site, we noticed that there were these hundreds of these tiny little rodents running around, which turned out to be California voles. And these, they're like mouse-sized, so very small, not particularly smart. They kept almost getting, stepped on by people. That's how many there were. And these undergo these like population cycles. Every few years, there's an increase, usually favorable food conditions, favorable weather conditions, makes them breed. And what was funny was that one day, early in the 2024 field season, I was approached by two students. They were like, we just saw a squirrel like kind of attacking or playing one of those voles. And I was like, what are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about. They were like, yeah, we actually filmed it. And then they showed me a video of one of our adult female squirrels called Aries. She was super feisty too, I should say. Not just towards voles, but also towards humans. She was kind of biting and chasing that vole. And I was not sure what we were dealing with, honestly. But then as days went on, we started seeing more and more squirrels holding dead voles or actively hunting these voles throughout our study population. So our squirrels started hunting voles. And it was such a widespread behavior that over want to say not even 2 months, we saw like 70, so 70 occasions of different squirrels engaging in either hunting or eating, or also competing over voles. So they were trying to fight over that research too.
Like cats.
Like cats, indeed, yeah.
Yeah. The crazy thing, they're eating them too, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So how they're eating, I don't know if there's too much detail, but kind of like almost like a little burrito. So once they've captured a vole,
Bull burrito.
they usually like, yeah, pretty much. They took the head off and then started eating the flesh from the inside. They kind of held it in their two paws. So it was not necessarily pretty to watch, but fascinating, and pretty incredible.
The vole became a bowl.
Pretty much. Yeah, and we started looking like what sort of patterns do we see? Does everybody do it? Is there any learning involved? And in the initial publication that came out maybe a little over a year ago, we basically just describe the behavior and link it to the YouTube channel. So definitely check that out. It's cool. And we know that pretty much all ages, so juveniles and adults and all sexes, so males and females engage in the behavior across the study area. So it really suggested that these squirrels kind of have an innate tendency to hunt and consume meat if the opportunity presents itself. So that really these squirrels, like most other squirrel species, are what we call opportunistic omnivores.
Right.
So they will eat pretty much anything if opportunity presents itself. And that just this widespread hunting was just a fact or an artifact of there being an immense increase in availability of these prey.
Yeah. So what I read was, and I'm probably wrong in a number, that there's 7 times more than there typically are. The population was there. And I'm wondering if what you were saying at different times, food and that's there, has it ever been, when you started studying this thing, did you find that maybe in the past people have seen squirrels eating that? Or is this just a whole new thing that's never been observed?
What was super interesting was that, we had never observed it in the 12 years that we had been there. We had never seen that behavior before. But what was very interesting is that after the publication came out, it went berserk in the media. People loved the story of the carnivorous squirrels. And then so many members of the public, I'm not kidding, I've probably received about 200 emails from members of the public sharing their stories of hunting or carnivorous squirrels that they have observed or filmed in their backyards or while hiking. And I realized just how many anecdotes there are of this carnivorous behavior across many squirrel species. It's just something that we had, nobody had ever systematically recorded.
Yeah. So if you're listening and you've seen it, you inundate her with emails and send her thousands.
Oh, goodness.
Send her a lot. But if you've seen some stuff and you saw a generation, if your grandfather talked about it or something, that'd be really interesting what they observed and some of the stories you had just from scientifically. It's fascinating. I'm telling you, by the way, again, I'm going to mention that video. And if you go to the description, if you're listening now, the link to her YouTube thing will be in there. And we're going to get to that here at the end anyways. But you go watch that thing. They're brutal. They're like the most vicious cat you've ever seen. It's crazy.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Makes you think twice about approaching one in a while.
So getting back to your saying the juveniles and everybody else was doing that it was innate. So it was just part of their thing. They didn't have to be taught that they already knew. So is this one of those evolutionary things or whatever?
Yeah, it's what we think most likely. We're currently working on doing some more formal analysis on how this behavior spread, who started it. Mm-hmm. And what we find is that likely it is an innate thing that or they're learning it individually by just trying it out. What we find is actually that more aggressive squirrels, so those that they initiate more aggressive encounters with other squirrels, and they're more likely to win those aggressive encounters. They were also more likely to eat meat So we've seen them more often with voles and also other prey when we looked at DNA in their fecal pellets. So that tells us something about what sort of diet they are ingesting. And we found that aggression does play a role in their prevalence to be carnivorous. So that was a very interesting find that not all squirrels are the same, but that there's individual traits that make them behave in a certain way.
Well, I see it all the time. And it's funny. I have this a rescue dog, and I live next to a park, and there's a gazillion squirrels right now because they're all the babies are out now, right? The youngsters are out. My dog doesn't chase squirrels at all. Every now and then in the backyard, she may. We could go by a squirrel, be sitting 10 feet, 5 feet away. She'll just look at it and keep walking. I've never seen a dog like that. I'm just thinking, wow, this is so interesting because from a diet standpoint, when they were eating all the nuts and that, they were getting protein, basically. And so with the meat, they're getting protein. So it hasn't affected their protein intake at all. If anything, it may improve it a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what we thought. I mean, eating a full a full vole is a huge meal for them.
Right.
So a lot more because normally they eat, as you say, they eat grasses or fresh greens or the occasional nut if they're already ripe. But yeah, eating a full bowl is a lot of food, and we were really excited because squirrels are income breeders. So if they have more food available, that will directly increase their reproduction. So they will have more offspring. Larger litters. So we were quite excited for the year after, essentially, because they usually reproduce in spring. So we were really looking forward to our summer fieldwork 2025. We usually just do our fieldwork in summer. And we're expecting loads and loads of pups and really well-nourished squirrels. But I think on the first day, we didn't see a single squirrels, when normally we see like 20 or 30 at least. And I was like, maybe just the weather was weird. And the next day, the same. We may have trapped maybe 2 or 3, and it was just a ghost town. And I was really, really puzzled until we figured out that because of those voles, we had a massive increase in predators. Yeah. So coyotes, raptors, rattlesnakes. I saw some locals that hiked in the park and they were like, we have never had this many rattlesnakes in our gardens, like as of that year. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. So it was kind of a ripple effect almost. The voles led to more predators, but then the voles died off, and then the predators had to eat something else, so they turned on the squirrels. And we had about an 80% population crash in our squirrels. So it was absolutely massive. And that's also part of the ongoing studies, is to document who survived, who fared better in this high predation environment. For example, are those that are not afraid of humans maybe also not afraid enough of other threats like natural predators? So these are questions that we're currently looking at, and then looking at the population recovery that is happening now over the next, hopefully, couple of years.
Well, plus, the squirrels are probably better tasting now that they've been eating the voles.
Yeah, they're all fattened up.
This is a nice, fat, tasty guy.
Absolutely. Getting a little slower, too, so easier to catch.
So what have we missed? What else? Is there anything else we missed? Can you think of anything?
No, I think we've covered a lot. I just really want to emphasize the squirrels are so amazing at, adapting to their environment, and they can really teach us a lot about being flexible and just kind of. One of the articles said when life gives you lemons, then you start eating voles or something like it. I was like, I quite like that.
I've got something similar for you here later on. So for everybody, I know you're going to be leaving Davis soon. You're going back to Switzerland. So what are you going to be studying now? Are you studying some other animal, or what are you going to be doing?
Yeah, actually, I'm doing a slight shift in careers. I'm leaving academia, at least for the moment. I've just accepted a position as a lead scientist at Wildtierschweiz, which is the Swiss Wildlife Society.
Cool.
And we conduct research on different local species to both improve the wildlife management, so lots of conservation efforts, animal welfare, and of course also representing the people's interests. So that will be quite a new role, really exciting, and of course I get to move back to Switzerland after more than a decade away.
And sing Edelweiss and all that other stuff, right?
Yeah, eat all the chocolate in the world. Yeah.
Okay, so for everybody to find you, to get information, again, we'll have the links in there. Social media, websites, anything that you can point people to, whatever it is, let them know. And of course, again, I'm going to reemphasize the fact that if you want to take the time and go to the description, it's in the description as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll make sure. I do have a personal website where I've always linked my most up-to-date email address, since I'm moving institutions so often. But if you just put Dr. Sonja Wild into Google, you will most definitely find me, and my links to all the social media I have.
And I'll have all that stuff in there. So I've been dying to ask you the question, Wild. Is that your family name?
It is, yeah, and it's so fitting. I maybe part of the reason why I pursued a PhD, because I thought Dr. Wild just sounds really awesome.
Or maybe that's just your personality.
Yeah, who knows?
Now I know.
And yeah, fun fact: it is in German. It's pronounced Wild. We have traced back our ancestry about 500 years in the same village that I grew up in. So cool. We are very, very, very local Swiss.
Okay, so now's the time for my joke that you're just dying to hear. And as I tell everybody every time, I know you're cringing. Sonja didn't want to tell the joke. She wanted me, you get stuck with me again. But so I always tell everybody, if you want to be on the show, you want your grandkids on the show, your nieces, nephews, whoever, I will gladly have you on as a guest at the end of the show and tell a joke. And as you've listened before, I've had other people on. But if you email me at mkyle@thefurrealpodcast.com, I get back to everybody. Also, if you have an idea for a guest, I'll gladly get back to you. So the joke of the day is, what is a squirrel's motto? Take life one acorn at a time. Now, I'm going to change this after today. Take life one vole at a time. Anyways, Sonja, thanks so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. I think you're doing really cool stuff. I'm fascinated by all this stuff. I'm going to look at squirrels a lot different now, especially at nighttime. If I see a squirrel, I'm running. Anyways, Sonja, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thanks so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Well, I'm sure it was entertaining at least. Anyways, and then for everybody else out there, without you guys, this podcast wouldn't be what it is. Keep following, listening, passing the word on. Again, if you've got an idea for a guest, that's always great too. But really, truly, without you, a lot of guests wouldn't come on, and the growth of it has been because of everybody else. And it's a treat for me to be able to do these things. And truthfully, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for listening. For real.
That concludes this episode of For Real with your host, markakyle. For previous and future episodes of For Real, listen via all major podcast streaming sites.